It's not every day you get to hear from an entrepreneur with 20 years experience who's had 2 podcasts and who's willing to really pull back the curtain on the pivots throughout her own business journey. Jennifer Loehding is host of the Starter Girls podcast and helps women build a framework for their best version of themselves, or as we call it on this show, their own definition of abundance. Jennifer's work as a success architect prioritizes health and well-being, allowing her to integrate strategies to help her clients with mental clarity, enhanced performance, and greater harmony. I think we could all use a success architect in our lives. Jennifer, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. How about you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm excited to chat. I know this has been a long time coming. And fun fact for listeners that don't know, Jennifer interviewed me on her show 5.5+ years ago, back when I was doing financial coaching. So we've kind of been back and forth in touch this whole time, but this is like such a full circle moment in a way. So Jennifer, give us a quick overview of where your business is at today and how you help people.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to come on here. I love when somebody comes on my show and then I get to go back on theirs and sort of give back, because I think it's so fun. And I think what's so fun about this is, yes, because we did yours so long ago. I feel like it was just yesterday, but it's been a while now, right?
Yes.
And so here we are kind of circling back and catching up. And so, yeah, a lot has happened, I think, since that time. I mean, I launched a show, let go of a show. I worked with several mentors, and I ended up, just ironically, this, like, as of 2 days ago, finished up a digital product that I've been working on. And, you know, it's crazy because the whole time I've been coaching and doing all these things, I've really been trying to move into a space where I could do more like group coaching, more presentations, more things where I could get into the masses. Not that I don't love the individual, but for me, really, to make good use of my time, I do so much better when I can get in front of people. And so fun things, I've been doing more presentations. Like I said, just finished up this digital course, and really all of the work that I do is centered around, I say specifically women because that's my background. Men are not excluded. It's just that's where I, came from, 22 years of Mary Kay. But a lot of the work that I do is really about helping women overcome subconscious blocks. It's helping them work through the muck that's keeping them stuck in their day-to-day grind. And the 2 things we want really as women is we want to increase our profits and we want to claim our time, like reclaim it, right? Mm-hmm. And so I know for me personally, starting in the entrepreneur space as a young mother with an 18-month at the time and then raising 3 children through that was always what was important to me, was having time for my family and being able to bring some income in. And so that's really what I do, is just help them work through that. That's what my new program's about. And it's really what I do even through my podcast, the stuff that I'm talking about.
Yeah. And at this point, you mentioned it a little bit, you started a show, dropped a show, started a show. So you have 2 shows at this point.
I have one.
You have one.
The one is still out there. You can still access it, but I'm not actively recording on that one right now.
Okay. So talk me through the decisions to start or start something different. Many of the listeners may be thinking about just starting their first show, much less their second show. But if you could just give us some insight on, what was going on in your business, what were the decisions behind these moves?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think a lot of what we do as entrepreneurs and in life is a live and learn experience, right? We go through and we take bold leaps, and then we either swim or sink or swim with them. And I've always kind of been the person that when I have an idea and want to do something, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it, and I'm going to take the good and the bad with it. And so, when I started the first show, Starter Girls, we started that back in 2019 before the pandemic hit. And it was myself and another Mary Kay ex-sales director. We had come out and we were all about empowering women. We had been doing that for years. It was like all I knew. And so that's what we did when we started that first show. But what I will tell you is it was birthed out of a parking lot because we were kind of disgruntled and didn't know what we wanted to do. And I'm like, hey, let's do a podcast. It sounds like fun. 2 weeks later, here we are in a Venture X studio, which you know, but for your listeners, like a co-op sharing space. We're in a spot 2 weeks later launching a podcast with absolutely no training, nothing. We knew nothing. We had 2 computers set up. She was managing one, I was doing one, and we were live at the time. We were putting those things out on Facebook. And so we learned a lot in the process, and ended up being that we decided, kind of midway through to part paths, and we're still remain great friends, but we just had different vision. And then I ended up bringing on a new co-host that had been a previous guest on my show, and she had come on twice, and thought, hey, I did this for 18 months by myself. I'm going to bring a new one in. And so we did that for a while, and it worked out great. And then when 2022 rolled around, we decided that we wanted to maybe make the podcast a little bit different. We were going to go into like the music industry, kind of the entertainment side of things, because this gal that was working with me and our camera person were kind of in that industry. And so we thought, we'll tap into that market. It'll be a lot of fun. Well, I don't know. We did it for a while. Things kind of just didn't work out. And so it ended up becoming back to, it was my project. And so really it was just, we were looking to do something a little bit different. But I will tell you, having run the 2, because I had put the Starter Girls on hold for a year. And then I decided in 2023 that that's where my passion was. I mean, when I created that brand, it was really about empowering women, because I know the pain points. I mean, from being a young mom to now mom where my kids are adults and out of the house. I mean, running the business for that long, we're talking, 25 plus years. I don't know, my daughter's going to be 29. So 27, 28 years I've been an entrepreneur now. I know the pain points. And so really that's what, when I came back to that was the decision to bring it back, because I really wanted to take that show and hyper focus on what are these things in our lives right now that it could actually help us be better moms, better business owners, better leaders in our, wherever that capacity, because we're really leaders in a lot of places. It's not just in business. And so that's why I brought it back. And then when that did that was kind of that decision. Now I got 2 shows running. What do I do with 2 shows? And I just had to make an executive decision to say, look, I need to put my energy in one place. Where's my heart? Where's my passion? What am I really excited about? And that's the Starter Girls. And so I made the decision, I probably about 6 months ago, to put the Behind the Dreamers on hold. Shows are still accessible. They're great episodes, but we're no longer recording on that one right now.
Yeah. Very cool. So what your story shows us is just the ability to morph and change and grow as your ideas mature and as your business matures. So many people would look at that and go, oh, well, this was a failure, or that was that wrong decision, or, kind of just absorbing the negativity from those feelings associated with having to stop or start or switch directions or pivot. So could you share a little bit about the resilience and almost like why or how do you have so much resilience through all of these little decisions?
Well, you make a good point, because yes, there's 2 ways to look at things, right? And you can say it was a failure, or you can say it was a learning move. And and I'm a big fan of John Maxwell, and he, says sometimes you win, sometimes you learn, right? I think that's how he says it. And he's got a couple books on that. I made my son actually read the young adult version of that when he was younger. I've always leaned into being an optimist. I'm not perfect at it all the time, because I always tell people like I'm the practical optimist, because like I'm very practical, but I am able to find typically a silver lining in everything that occurs. And so I think a lot of it has stemmed from some of the pain points that I've had to go through in my personal life, not just in my business, that have really taught me some just massive amount of resilience. And so I think when you go through hard things, it makes some of these other things a little less challenging. And so I've always just kind of, when I hit those points, I'm not going to ever say that I don't have pain and I don't have emotion and I don't have, like, I just want to throw in the towel and be done, because yes, that is part of this journey in life, right? And in business. But typically when I have those moments, if I just, I tell myself to pause, like, Jennifer, pause on this, absorb the emotion. It's okay. You can be angry, but I'm also really good at giving myself time limits. And so what I mean by that is if I know that I'm going to get sucked into something and I'm going to really be pouting about this for a while, like I can't stay in that for a long time. The only thing I know to do is go to work. It just get active. And so I will tell myself a lot of times, you got like 24 hours to whine about this, 24 hours to pout, do whatever you need to do, kick it out of your system. But when you get up tomorrow, you're going to do something. And so that's how I've had to embrace these pivots. And, I don't think there's failures. I really don't. I think that you received what you needed at the time you received it. You quit at the time you needed to quit because you needed to learn something. You didn't have enough material to do what you needed to do. And so that may mean, and it may mean what I'm talking about is going back to these blocks or belief systems that we have. You still have something in there that you're clinging to, right? That you need to work through. And that's really what I've had to do for myself is learn how to recognize that stuff and go, okay, you made a decision to quit this. Okay, why are we quitting this? Is it serving me well right now? Do I need to do this because of my priorities, my values, where I'm at? Right. And so it's really just perception, a way of looking at things. But I think the more you exercise that muscle of it's a learning move, it's a learning move, it's a learning move, right? You get better at adapting to that and less hung up on this was a failure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that it has anything to do with, the services or the offers that you had at the time? Like, how did the podcast journey and the way that you help people pair together? Or did you find that, at one point the podcast was bringing in clients or it wasn't? Or could you navigate that a little bit for us?
Well, let me start off by saying this because you probably know how this is with us podcasters. A lot of us get into podcasting because we really just we just love podcasting. We like talking to people and we love helping. So I'm going to say this from the beginning, my show was always about really just being an influencer and an impactor, like just giving content to people. I'm going to be sincere. I never cared about the money. And even to this day, I struggle with that because I still want to just say that I do this because I really love these conversations. It's like, for me, I need to talk to people. And so for me, it is a way to be in the space with people that I really admire and enjoy having dialogue with, right? But we are business owners, right? And we have to think practical about how we're doing things. And so I will tell you a lot of ways. It hasn't necessarily always been an immediate ROI that has come from my podcast, but what it has done is it's helped me build relationships and collaborations. It's allowed people to come into my space. They see me, my face is out there, so that when I do a presentation like I did a few weeks ago on nervous system regulation, I have people show up because they know they are hearing my content. They're hearing what I'm putting out there. So I think it's more about the relationships that it's developed for me. But also, I will tell you that in the process of that, because I think as you go through these pieces, you learn what's working, you learn what's not working. And I don't know about you, but I get a lot of agents that want to get their people on my show.
Yes.
And that's great, but I got a lot of people that want to get on the show. And so it's really helped me put some systems in place where now I can actually, for some of these people coming on, offer packages if they need some extra media or something, because you and I are doing this stuff already and we know how to whip up a lot of this stuff, right? But we're doing it. I mean, you're doing it as a business. I'm kind of just doing it because that's part of the podcasting that I'm putting out there. So I am kind of evolving that to now where I do have some like sponsorship packages for people coming on. And because I just worked out this thing I built, I'm actually going to navigate and weave that back into my podcast as a little bit of a marketing piece to get people to go. And it's actually, there's a quiz. So I want them to go take the quiz is what I want them to do.
Good. Okay. So stay on that because a lot of people are struggling to navigate this space. Like, I'm a professional in this lane and podcasting is so cool. It's very interesting. I love listening. So I should have a podcast, but how do I marry that with my business and with the knowledge that there's no button on your podcast app to like go buy their thing or whatever. So there has to be this funnel, right? It's called a funnel in marketing terms, to guide people from hearing your voice, knowing and loving you, to buying your thing. So you're talking about a quiz. You mentioned a course. I'm sure you've got a newsletter. Like there's all these different pieces to it. And that is overwhelming to a lot of people.
Yes,
This whole
it is.
funnel. What the heck is a funnel, right?
Yes,
So
it is definitely.
share a little like your path and your development. Like how are you weaving that in and kind of decode that a little for us?
Well, let me tell you the challenge first, because I think you and your audience will appreciate this, because this has not been an overnight thing for me at all. Like I'm just getting this finally all together. So imagine I formed my business in 2018 and here we are 6 years later and I'm finally but here's the thing. I had mentors along the way and I got what I needed from each of those mentors. So if you back up to say, let's go back to 2022. I hired this mentor for 2 years, paid him a hefty price. He was a guy, I think, out of Scotland, an amazing guy. He taught me how to create a high ticket course, but kind of like a Netflix experience. So not like, I don't even know how to explain this. I tell people it was like a bridge of taking my 20-something years of Mary Kay, being in an immersion type experience and putting that with a course. And so it's like watching a Netflix documentary. All these videos are like going through this whole transformation process. So I build this out and I get to the end of it and he's basically told us how to market this. And I'm like, I can't do this. Like, this is like a high ticket course and I have to find very specific people that are going to be willing to pay for this high ticket course. And I paused for a moment because I thought about my journey. I wasn't at that high ticket. I am now. I will pay that now. But I wasn't at that when I started my entrepreneur journey. I was a very different person. And I really had to regroup and think, what am I trying to do here? Like, I'm trying to take that entrepreneur from maybe she's been in for a while, maybe not, but maybe she's feeling stuck. Like she's just not getting where she needs to be. I want to work her to here. So this past summer, I went into another mastermind program. I had a little break between the mentors. I went into another mastermind. And this was like probably the next pivotal thing. And you remember how I said a few minutes ago, how we receive the information when we need to get it? She told me, I want you to put that high ticket on pause. Put it on pause right now. We need to build you an offer suite. We need to pull you back so that we can get your people and work up to this level. And so that is what I've really done here. And so what that meant was I had to create a quiz. And, I had plenty of pain points on that because I went into Typeform to do it, realized I didn't know how to do Typeform. Then I got into Jotform and I'm like, okay, I kind of know Jotform, but I don't know how to do all the logic and conditions. So I hired somebody on Upwork to help me finish that. And then I started working on the micro niche course, which is the mini course before that high ticket. And you're talking July. So here we are now in February. That's how long I've been working on it. And finally this week, I got that micro niche put together. So we basically have that quiz, which I will be putting probably some kind of, I got to put a little something together that I'll announce in my podcast. And it'll be like something like, go to startergirls.com, whatever. And here's the page for that. And then building that out where once they get that quiz, they get an email, right? That's going to take them to the introduction to that mini course. And then that will start basically weeding them through. And then that next level between that mini course and high ticket is a boot camp. So you'll see there's these 4 stages that basically are helping me work those people who want to cream, like the cream of the crop, right? Those people that want to move to that top level without now just saying, okay, who's going to be those people that are going to go into that top? So it's like a mentorship, really. It's a process and a journey for them to go through. And each piece layers because what they're learning in the business in the beginning is really fundamental to all of, as they go through if they decide to do the boot camp or if they decide to go to the high ticket, this is going to navigate it through. So those are the pieces. But the big point I want to, stress here is that, again, that resilience and that patience, because Virginia, I'm going to tell you, there have been many times I'm like, I'm done. I cannot build another thing. I cannot sit down and look at another idea or like I'm right in the middle and 3/4 through and I'm like, I got another idea now. Wait, no, stay focused.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So something that I suspect someone may be thinking as they hear your story, and completely, it makes sense. Okay. We bring people into this quiz, then they get an email, then they can do this, and then there's a stair step, and then they can stair step to the next one. They're thinking like, oh, great. now I have to build like 4 things. I'm never going to get there. Right. So, and I would encourage them just to hear your story, learn from that experience. And if there's a chance that they could build the mini course first.
Yes.
That would be the way to go, because
Don't do it the way I did it, Virginia. Don't do it the way I did it. No, that's what I'm saying. And I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I'm just saying for your listeners right now, you do not need to do it the way I'm stubborn as a mule. Like, I got 3 kids like this. We do I read magazines backwards. Like, I flip the opposite direction. Like, I tend to have to learn on my own curve. And there's probably some, some listeners out there, some entrepreneurs that are like me, that we have to learn on our time frame. But yes, absolutely. You can just start with that entry level quiz, however you want to build. You don't have to even do anything that complicated. And then that micro niche course, start there. Mm-hmm. Don't feel like you need to build that whole thing. I don't even have to be honest with you, I have the high ticket and I have the mini. I don't even have the boot camp lined up yet.
Yeah.
See,
it's just a process of growing and looking and evaluating. Okay, you get new information about what these tiered offers should look like, and then you build the thing. It's not necessarily like, let me build them all and then I'll launch. And meanwhile, I have no audience built. So you did something interesting accidentally, which was build your audience first, really with less of an offer or without an offer, just because you're passionate about something. And some people may be like, well, I can't like fund this podcast for however many years without having an offer. So there is kind of like a chicken and egg thing going on. But you were offering other coaching services and things on the side, but it just wasn't this very clear, tiered, pre-built course, boot camp, high ticket, stair step. So could you share a little bit about like what the early days looked like in your business? Because not that people listening are early in their entrepreneurial journey. They have an established practice. They might have been doing this for 20 years. But when we're looking at launching a new marketing arm, as in the podcast, you start to look at your business slightly differently and think, oh, okay, so how do I bring people into this? Especially if we're talking about like a financial advisory practice, you're asking people to move millions of dollars over to your management. That's a big step. So there has to be some smaller, quick wins in there that may not exist. And so it is kind of like building a baby business. So share with us those early days, please.
Yeah, and I still do coach individual. I just don't do it as much because, as I was telling you before the show, and I maybe didn't say this part, but I love working with people. I get tired very quickly when I have to do a lot of individual because I'm extremely invested in the people that are working with me. I want to see people succeed, and it will drive me absolutely crazy if someone's paying me and we're not moving the needle. I can't, like, my conscience cannot do it. So, and that's when I always say we have the coming to Jesus moment, because I'm like, we are not moving the needle. We need to do something. I can't keep doing this, So when I think back to in the beginning, go back to what I said about building those relationships, because yes, having a podcast, and I don't know in the financial sector because I'm not in that sector, but I've always been in a space where I've had to have a service where I've had to sit down with people and have those face-to-face conversations, or at least do a Zoom, something where I'm getting across from somebody and talking about my services. But when we talk about building the audience, and if you don't have a big enough, there are different things you can do. I know we did this in the beginning, and then I walked away from it and I went back to it in the beginning, what I was doing in the beginning. But that was, really trying to create that email list right away so that I can have a way to keep kind of building that relationship with people, right? Like, and immediately when somebody comes on the show, they're already, automatically going into that. And of course they can unsubscribe at any time. I'm not going to be offended by that, but I automatically have that going in place so that I'm building up that rapport with them. But when I think about, like, if I were guiding another podcast business owner right now, and I was telling them some things to do, it might be just, setting up that one-on-one call after with them, just to get feedback on how they felt about the show. Like, how did it go? How did you feel? What did you learn? Any recommendations for me as a host, so that you build some kind of connection, because from there, that can lead into some other kinds of conversations about Tell me about what you do. And see, now you're getting into a dialogue where you can actually talk about what each of you are doing. And then maybe that can lead to something. That's how I've always approached it. But that's also because my background, was in network marketing, where we had to sit down and kind of have those, face-to-face conversations. And it's still the same thing I do now. If I can't get in front of somebody, I'm going to still have a conversation with them and hopefully build some kind of relationship. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing in your business. I find out a lot when they're on the show, but they don't always find out about me. So that's what I'm saying. Sometimes you just have to have that conversation. I would love to get to know a little bit more about what you're doing in your line of work. And then you can see if maybe there's some kind of collaboration, or if maybe, you say something that sparks and they want your services, or maybe they refer somebody your direction. So that's probably like what I think about immediately I was doing in the beginning when I was grabbing, was building the relationships. And then how do I go from there to get them as clients? Do they all become clients? No. Some of them morph into other things, like I said, where it becomes a collaborative, process where it might be we're working on, like I'm working with somebody right now that's doing he hasn't been on my show yet, but he's doing like an author speaker success event here in Dallas. And it's for people like that we're working with right now. They're building their platforms, they're building podcasts, maybe have a book, maybe not, but they can come in and they can do like a podcast reel and do a headshot and everything. And so that kind of stems from him, the work that that I've been doing, and we've come together and we're putting that or he's putting it together and I'm speaking at it. So I think it's about building relationships. That's where we have to start.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and a lot of what you're mentioning is there's two different ways to think about the guests that can be on your show. And I'm sure there's more, but two main ones that I see. One of them would be that the guests you have on are potential clients, potential partners, potential, somehow, some way they are going to potentially create money flow into your business. The other way to look at the guests who could be on your show would be strictly from an educational perspective. And that's where, partners would still qualify there, collaborators, anyone that you could parallel with. And like you said, speak at their event, or maybe it's a CPA that complements your bookkeeping services that you offer, or whatever it is, right? It's a complementary offering and a partner in that way. So you could have potential guests who are clients or could be clients, and then you could have guests who are partners. So you're thinking about, or you were originally thinking about guests being potential clients. And then I'm hearing a little bit of a shift actually, where you're looking more towards the collaborations and the partners, which I think is also something that I missed early in my business, was that partnership piece and understanding what it meant to have referral partners in the space. Is there any other learning curve like that you've noticed or that you've experienced that you're like, oh, duh, I should have been doing this from the beginning?
Yeah. No, I think it's like I said, I think you go through and what you realize, I don't know about you, but for me personally, if I do something long enough, it's kind of like when I decided to do a release on my podcast show, every now and then I'll have people ask me, they'll say, do you really need a release? And I'm like, yes, because there's always the one person. There is, and I've had them. You do it, been around long enough, right? My point to that is if you do something long enough and you get tired of it, you change, right? Like you make changes in the way you do things. And I think that this whole thing about podcasting has really kind of been a journey, all of it from learning. And I'm still learning, I think that had I in the beginning, had I thought about, I don't even know that I would have thought about the collaborative, because I came from the network marketing space and we didn't really have to collaborate much with people outside. I mean, occasionally we would do a bridal fair or something like that. But when I moved out of that space and got into where I was networking with people in different industries, I really started recognizing this idea that you need to have referral partners. You need to have people that understand what you do, and you need to get clear about what you do. That's something I struggled with for a really long time. I mean, it's like, what am I doing? I'm coaching people. I'm helping them be better human beings. Like, what am I doing? And then I really got down to, I went into Chat GPT and I'm like, help me, tell me what Jennifer Loehding does. And then I'm like, that's how I came up with the whole success architect, because I realized what I'm doing is giving people a framework for long-term sustainability. So it doesn't really matter what they're doing, whether they're building a podcast, running a marathon, changing their diet, trying to build a relationship. This framework I'm teaching them applies to all of that, right? But I had to figure that out. I had to figure out, what is my unique selling proposition? What is that thing that's making me unique? Is it really all that unique? I don't know, but it's my unique because I put things together to make it, right? So it's getting, I think that's what I would say. If I really wanted to say, I wish I would have known, I wish that I would have had those mentors that I had the past 3 years, like in the beginning, or maybe when I first started this, because I could have figured a lot of that out quicker. But at the same time, I recognized that this is how I needed to figure it out. Like this is my journey, and this is what I needed to gather to get to where I am. And so, now it's funny because I interview these guests that come on and I'm still thinking, oh, like, okay, so how can I help this person? Are we just going to be friends? Or is this going to be somebody that I think we'll have a collaborative effort with, and sometimes I just don't even worry about it, Virginia. I just let it roll. But what I'll tell you is these people will come back out of somewhere and they'll be like, hey, I want to do something. Are you interested in doing this? Or, hey, I got somebody for you, to talk to. And it's what it is. It's our journeys, where we're at. And I think really the main thing is building relationships.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Would you kind of pull back the curtain a little bit on your podcast production process and any bumps in the road or changes you've had to make? Yeah, obviously you have produced 2 shows. Like we said earlier, people are often just trying to think just about launching one. So coming up with the concept, the branding, the actual launch process, and then of course sustaining that over time. The editing bogs people down. That's why I do what I do now. And continuously coming up with content or continuously booking guests. Like there are so many pieces that go into it. How have you navigated that? And if you could just give us a few bumps in the road and then tips on how you solved it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to say this because I think it's like having children. Once you have one, you get it figured out. Number 2 ain't so hard, right? Then you go to 3 and yeah, you got it. Okay. So podcasting is kind of the same way. I think that once you figure the things, like certain things out, it's not that much more difficult to actually do another one at that point. It's really just about your time and whether or not you have the time and resources to do it. So when I talk about bumps, oh my gosh, there's been so many. Like it's funny now because I feel like I have it down to an art. Now, I would love to get somebody to do it, but it's not something that like I want to invest a ton of money in it right now because it's growing. I mean, we've got almost about 20,000 followers in YouTube now, finally, but here it's like the bamboo, right? You plant it and it sits and then bloom. So it's growing. But yes, there have been so many, in the beginning, when I first started out, I was working on Adobe Premiere. Oh my gosh, it was so complicated. Like we just dove in. I didn't know. I'd never taken a lesson on Adobe. I get my little disc. I'm in there we're getting the files from the studio, taking them home, and I'm popping them in my computer and editing them on Adobe. Things are so much easier now. We've got these platforms like Riverside.fm. You can use Descript. It's so easy. You can take out the audio if it's messed up in Descript. You can use AI to correct things. I mean, it is so much easier than what it was in the beginning. The other thing, when I started, I went into a studio. I paid to go into a full studio. It was great because we were doing a lot of them live, except for, when we were in lockdown, we did some online and we did some, I had some people still show up, many people still show up during COVID, but we were in studio. And so I was paying for a studio, paying all that extra overhead. And, once I realized we had these platforms, I was like, why were we not doing this all along? Like, this is so much easier, and cost productive. You can get great quality sounding audio for your podcast without having to pay for all that. So I think a lot of the big things that I did in the beginning were really thinking I had to have all these special things and had to have everything, right. And I realized people really just want consistency, authenticity. Like they don't care that everything has to be perfect. And even to the point, like, let me say this. In the beginning, I was so hypercritical of myself. Everything I would say and do, like I'd rip my episodes apart, like I'd get hung up on. I remember at one point saying, awesome, like all the time. I love that word awesome. I still love the word awesome, but I would say it all the time. And I think it was probably at that time kind of a nervous tick because I was nervous, like I'm on camera, I got somebody across from me and I'm like inside, like freaking out. But I'd be like, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I'd talk over people and I really would be so critical of myself. I'd look at that episode after and I would go, God, that was just terrible. Why did I say that? Why did I do that? Oh, can I edit? And I'm like, no, you're not taking that out. Just leave it alone. Now I've learned to just embrace it. This is who I am. This is my personality. This is the way I am. And really just kind of laugh about those things. And ironically, what happened when I stopped getting hung up, for instance, on that word awesome, like beating myself down, I kind of quit saying the word awesome all the time. Now that I say that, I'll probably start saying it again, right? But I think that it really just was, stop worrying about everything being so perfect. I got an editor to help me, and he's kind of my sponsor in my show. So we worked out a little bit of a deal where I pay him a little bit. He gets a spot on my show. It was a collaborative effort that I put together, and it's worked out well. And so I think it's just learning these, going through the process, you'll figure this stuff out. But I definitely think, like somebody trying to do this, to get with you because this is your expertise, talk to somebody who kind of knows the ins and outs and can kind of walk you through some of those steps. I mean, everything from your recording platform to how you're distributing. Do you need an editor? Do you want to just do it yourself? How do you want to do your clips? All of those things. And I will tell you this, and this, in the beginning, we had to write all our show notes out, right? Remember, we had to now we have lovely AI and these programs give us show notes. And I love it because now I just take a copy, throw it over into there and I say, make sure this is kind of looks like something I would write. Grammarly, check everything out and boom, we're done.
Yeah.
Production's easy.
Yeah, I agree. The technology advancement has really helped even for the team. And I don't police necessarily what programs they use, as long as when I see it and hear it and read it, that it looks good and it doesn't sound like a robot. Then, and we do have pretty high standards here. So certain things I'll hear the sound, I'm like, this is overprocessed. You can tell, dial back or whatever. And so there's a quality control feedback loop. And we've done a lot within the business to adapt to all of this new software and technology and AI, but then also maintain high standards. And that's been a challenge for my end. But I love to hear kind of the use case for it and how you've been able to adapt over time to these different pieces and platforms. And I agree, it's a challenge, not just, okay, what equipment, where's it plug in? How's this? Okay, this cord is round. What do I do with this? And there's all these different quote unquote barriers that people face just getting started. But then recognizing, like what we were talking about earlier, how your offers might change. What you say in your show might change. You might be promoting a different program, or you might focus your guesting in a different way, and just to allow that growth and change and have resilience through it and continue to just allow it to mature. Because if your show sounds the way it did on episode 1, on episode 100, we have a major problem. You haven't grown, you haven't matured. And the idea is that when you listen back to episode 1, you're cringing at what you said. Yeah. And you should. Yeah. You should. And I'll say, you're talking about, you said awesome all the time. I say awesome. I love that. There's various verbal tics that I have as well. We all have them. They show up differently. Different people can be more practiced or have more coaching behind them to suppress some of those verbal tics, but we all have them. We all have that natural response of, oh, that's cool, or whatever you would say that you feel is a transition to affirm what the other person just said and then start your question so you feel like you're not cutting them off. And it's natural. Don't be afraid of it. Is there anything else that you would say just drove you nuts in the beginning, or that you felt was a barrier that you realized wasn't, and you were just, feeling stuck almost for no reason?
Well, I think would be just really getting my content out there, getting people to watch it and listen to it. And it's still, we are in this. I think most of us in the podcast world are in this because we want to create impact. We want people to listen to our show because we hope that somebody's going to get something from it, right? And I tend to lean into, like, when we go back and we talk about, kind of go back to what you said earlier about, somebody going and saying, I have to create 4 products. And I have always been of the mindset that anything worth doing is going to take time. It's going to take time to work through it. And you've got to be that kind of person that if you really want to create something that's going to create real impact, it's going to take some dirty work. Like, it's going to that's just the way it's going to be. Now, you can create something, quick in the meantime to get some wins, which is what we want. But to create something really meaningful, it's going to take some time to do, right? So I think that, going through all of this process, I kind of lost my train of thought where I was going with all this, Virginia.
That's okay.
Sometimes on my own show, there may be one of the things I have to work on.
Yeah, that's okay. We can trim this section. Yeah, no big deal.
Well,
you did start to mention getting people to watch your content.
Okay,
so
yes,
I think
that was my thing in the beginning, was that I think really as a pain point was really getting it out there, right? Like getting people to pay attention, to listen to the show. Do I do advertising? Do I not do advertising? Where do I put my energy? And when you have all the different platforms, being YouTube, iTunes, or Apple, whatever they call it, a Spotify, it's like, where do you put everything, And so I've had to really just keep learning and reading. And I read a lot of your emails that come out too. I read a lot of people's different, content that's coming out there. And so I had to, in the beginning, I wasn't doing a lot of it. We built a lot in the beginning, and then we kind of settled down because we got in at a time when nobody around us was doing podcasts. It was kind of a new thing in my circle because we didn't really know anybody doing it. Now everybody's got a podcast, right? And so when we started in the beginning, we were kind of getting our voice out there, and then it kind of went stagnant for a while. And it was like, what do I do with this? Like, there were days where I'm coming in and I'm doing these shows and I'm thinking, is anybody even listening to this stuff? Like, why bother? Because I feel like I'm just talking to myself, right? Like, I'm doing this, I'm putting in the time, the energy. And then I decided somewhere along the way to kind of just get really hyper focused on working on one platform, just really focus on one platform and that's why I chose YouTube, mostly too, because that's kind of, I think, where everything has shifted into the video space, And so that's been my focus. And I had to really be okay with saying, I'm not going to spend my time worrying about whether TikTok's built up or whether Instagram's built up or whether, focus on one area, because that's all I can do unless I'm willing to delegate it all. So I think that was probably in the beginning, one of the biggest things for me was, how do I get this out there and get people to pay attention to it? And then it was shifting to, where am I going to put my energy? Because I obviously cannot do all of this. I can't try to market all these places. So, and really just honing in on that one.
Yeah. Would you be willing to give people some clues as to what led to the greatest growth of your channel? What really garnered the most listeners? Like, what should we be doing?
Well, I will tell you right now, it's been the YouTube. Yeah. It's been advertising and YouTube. I don't do a lot of advertising. I don't want y'all to think I'm out there. I've been doing minimal $30 to $35 a week. That's all I have done. So you're talking 120, maybe 140 a month I've been putting into advertising. That is minimal when you think about advertising. But I really just decided, and I'm telling you, I say all this because I've only been doing this for about the last 6 months. And that's what I'm telling you. We went for a while where it was just, I was building, I was trying to figure out, do I keep the 2 shows? What do I do? Do I bring this one back? So we brought Starter Girls back in 2023. And between 23 and 24, there were a lot of shifts in there because that's when I let Behind the Dreamers go. I really started trying to figure out, what am I going to do with that Starter Girls platform? Do I want to make that a brand, not just a podcast, but a brand? And I want to say in summer of this past year is when I decided, I'm going to start running some ads through YouTube. I'm just going to start trying to put the content so it'll get in front of people. And I said, I'm not going to put a lot of money on, just because I didn't want to put it in there and be disappointed. Yeah. I'm not going to say that's a good thing or not, because I think we have to invest to get what we want, right?
Right.
But I figured if I did a minimal amount each week, I could swallow that and be okay with it. And so we started at about 3,500 6 months ago when I started. And so in that time, I think we're almost at the 20,000 mark, and there's been times where it's been kind of like, I didn't see a lot. And then there's been weeks where we had like 1,000 people come in 1 week. And I'm like, somebody must have shared something. Somebody did something somewhere. So I think if I were to give somebody advice on that, I would say my biggest thing was, like I said a minute ago, picking that one thing I wanted to hone in on. If that's going to be a social media platform, whatever that is, get into that one thing, figure it out what you need to do in that one thing. And for me, that was, I'm going to run some ads. I will tell you that in the beginning, I was using a service. And then I realized I figured out how to just go through YouTube. I figured out how to do it right through the YouTube. Way more effective. I was getting a better value for my money, getting more exposure, more views. And you can pick between doing, like, do you want to draw people to your website? Do you want to draw people to get views on your show? Do you want to get subscribers? I tend to go back and forth. Sometimes I'm going for subscribers. Sometimes I'm going for views. I want the views. I want people looking at the content. So, and in the end, you're always going to be better off, I think, getting the views, getting people to actually watch the content. So I would say that's probably been the biggest shift for me. But also, my stuff seems to do okay in LinkedIn too. I seem to have more of a pull in there, but that's just because of the type of content I'm putting out. I would imagine your listeners are going to be in the business space too.
Yeah.
So as a business to business owner, these I feel like have been the two platforms that have worked very well in my type of industry.
Yeah, I would agree. I think over the past few years, there's been a big shift, of course, to YouTube in the podcast space, but then also LinkedIn is having this like mini revival over the past few years, because 20 years ago, it was like, what is that? Like professional Facebook? Like, what is this trash?
Right.
Like nobody wanted to be on there. Very few people had profiles. And now it seems like that's where the party's at. So I agree. I think those are two platforms where you will find professional viewers, potential clients, people who have established businesses. In a lot of ways, you may find ideal clients and partners there. So I agree. That's awesome. Well, Jennifer, as we wrap up, I would love to hear a little bit around where we can find your next program, where we can sign up for coaching, and where we can listen to your show.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I always tell people the easiest place to go is just go to jenniferloehding.com, and I'm sure you'll get the show notes in there, but for my last name, because it's hard to spell. But if you look up my name, I mean, a lot of that stuff's going to pull up, but the hub page really has everything connected. So you can access the startergirls.com through there, which is the podcast. That's where the program is. And then pretty much everything's on my site. So you can get in there and dig around. You can learn a little bit about my journey and kind of see how I got to this spot.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I think you really shared some valuable information, and I just really appreciate that.
And thank you for the opportunity. My pleasure. I enjoyed chatting with you.
Same.